Hello and welcome to FYI, the Baxter Story podcast. I'm Sam Wakeham and host for our special interview with guest Dr. Laura Wyness. Laura is a registered nutritionist known for her expertise in evidence-based nutrition writing, workplace wellness and effective nutrition communication. In honour of Menopause Awareness Month, we're delighted to have Laura join our podcast. Author of Eating Well for Menopause, Advice and Recipes to Improve Your Health and Wellbeing, she'll be enlightening us with her insights and practical advice on navigating the challenges of menopause. During this podcast, we use the term woman throughout this talk with no intention of exclusion. It's important to highlight that it is not only those who identify as a woman who may experience menopausal symptoms. For example, some transgender men, non-binary people, and intersex people with variations in sex characteristics may also experience menopause. Hi Laura, thank you so much for joining our podcast. First up, can you introduce yourself and your nutritional journey?
Sure. So thanks for having me on the podcast. So I'm a registered nutritionist based in Edinburgh and have been freelance nutritionist now for almost 8 years and specialise in helping perimenopausal women with making dietary changes to help them through that kind of stage in life. So I do kind of one-to-one online calls and also work with some companies and workplace wellness talks and things like that. So it's quite a varied work that I do, but I really do enjoy helping women with eating better, basically. And with the menopause as well, that's kind of where I've specialised in offering advice. So I found I was getting a lot of questions from a lot of my one-to-one clients who were women, perimenopausal women, wanting to know, is there anything diet-wise that can help with symptoms that they were going through or help them, maintain their health as they go through menopause and beyond, and what should they be eating more of or less of to help with symptoms. So I find that they were asking a lot of questions. So that's kind of how I came to writing the Eating Well for Menopause book. Along with that, another registered nutritionist, Lynn Burns, we started off writing a little pamphlet initially for a few of our clients who were asking about menopause. And we put together a little bit of information and a few tailored recipes. And that got really good feedback. And we thought, hang on a minute, this is really interesting looking at this area. And there's not a lot of useful, credible, science-based information out there for women. This is going back kind of 4 or 5 years ago now. So we did a lot more research and put together an actual proper book, which was just published a few months ago, Eating Well for Menopause. And that contains a lot more information, science information, which covers most of the kind of common questions that women were asking about different aspects, and also some tailored recipes as well with the key nutrients that are useful for menopausal women. So hopefully it's a useful resource for perimenopausal women.
Absolutely. What other advice and tips can you find in your book?
Yeah, well, it covers, as I say, a range of the topics. So it covers the science behind what's happening in the body and the symptoms and effects of menopause on a woman's body, their heart health, their bone health, weight, sleep, and mental health as well. And also how important diet is, or some nutrients are, in helping alleviate some of the menopausal symptoms. There's well over 30 different menopausal symptoms that now recognised. And having a healthy diet can help with many of these symptoms, and also some of the maybe lesser known or lesser talked about impacts of menopause. So things like hydration and bladder health and how that impacts women, and also how menopause can affect body image, and changes to your body shape or changes to hair and skin can be a huge issue and kind of influence confidence as well. Not a lot of women, just all these changes going on. And also the myths as well. Thankfully, there's a lot more information now becoming available on menopause. But with that, I think there's a lot of now more misinformation along with that. So women are having to sift through a lot more information to actually find the credible science-based information and work out, okay, what is actually best for me with all the information now becoming available. So hopefully we help clarify a lot of messages and questions that women have.
Can you tell me a myth that you've seen that's not true?
Yeah, well, there's a few. Hang on, going through my brain at the moment. One of the big ones, I think, is soya foods, which a lot of women are not very keen on including in the diet because they've heard a lot of myths. or messages about breast cancer. And yes, there's a link between soya and hormonal cancers like breast cancer, but having soya foods in the diet, there's no risk. Even the World Cancer Research and the leading cancer charities all agree that having soya foods in the diet are perfectly safe for women who are at risk of breast cancer or who have gone through treatment for breast cancer. Slightly different kind of issue with the supplements of isoflavones or these phytoestrogens. That's a different story because you're getting quite a high dose of the isoflavones in one go. But certainly dietary soya foods, including soya in the diet, is perfectly safe and can actually help women potentially with their hot flushes. It can help alleviate some hot flushes in terms of the severity and frequency. Certainly in Asia, the women in Asia have about 20 to 10 or 20% of Asian women suffer from hot flushes, compared with about 80% of women in the UK who experience hot flushes to some degree. So it can actually, have a really positive effect.
And is that to do with the climate that they're living in, that the hot flushes severity? Sorry to jump about.
Yeah, no, it might be, but I think more the thinking is that it's more that they have had soya foods in their diet quite regularly from a young age. They're used to having soya or tofu in their diet all through their life, and maybe that has somehow, there's still quite a lack of understanding of how it actually works, but they seem to experience fewer hot flushes when they go through menopause. So whereas in the more kind of typical diet in the UK, soya is still quite a new food, or kind of new for a lot of people, and it's not really that commonly eaten, although I think it is becoming more common now. So yeah, possibly it's more to do with how accustomed it is in the diet.
That's really interesting. So it is very bespoke to an individual, what foods you should have in. Yeah. Going back to your book, how did you? It sounds like it's been a long journey. Were you trialing out the recipes? How did that work?
Yeah, well, writing a book is a lot of work, I found out. So yeah, it started off with, as I say, I think that it was the questions that women were asking us really that formed the structure of the book, and we've taken the common questions that we're being asked about in terms of the hot flushes, how diet can impact hot flushes, how best can I manage my weight during menopause, what about heart disease? Should I be thinking about my heart as I go through menopause, and how to keep my bones strong? So there's kind of common questions that we're being asked form this topic or the areas of each. And then we did a lot of research, obviously, and looked into the science and translated that science into key messages and practical suggestions of, okay, how does this science translate into what foods should be eaten more of, and how to incorporate these foods into snacks and meals, and then the recipes. Yeah, the recipe development again takes a lot of time. I've since found out, but it was quite good. We tested out quite a few of the recipes on family and friends, and we've got our Facebook group that we share recipes on, and we got a lot of feedback from some of our testers who were testing out the recipes for us. And then once we were happy with them, we nutritionally analysed all the recipes to make sure that, yes, they were given the right nutrients and the right balance of nutrients. And then everyone kind of cooks slightly differently. So some people like following recipes, I think, to the letter, and some are more flexible. So we wanted to make the recipes quite flexible and give suggestions, so that if you are following the recipe but don't have a particular ingredient, then we give suggestions on, if you don't have this, try using this instead. Or we've got little quick recipes to make your own pesto. We've got a salmon pesto recipe, and yes, you can use bought pre-made pesto, but it's quite straightforward to make homemade pesto quite easily. So if you've got time to do that, then we've got a little mini recipe. Yeah, hopefully it's very practical and usable. That's certainly the feedback we're getting from the women that we're talking to. That's what's most useful.
What's your favourite recipe in the book?
Gosh, oh, right, okay. Well, to be honest, I think it would be the edamame and green pea hummus, which
Ooh.
for me, I'm someone who never really had much soya foods, I must admit, up until quite recently. And I think edamame is a nice way to introduce soya foods into the diets. And certainly if you're used to the kind of classic hummus using chickpeas, it's a nice alternative to just use edamame beans. So frozen edamame beans, boil them up with some green peas, and then drain them, cool them down, and add some lemon juice and tahini and some flavors like maybe a bit of chili powder or chili flakes, if you like that flavor, or just some extra lemon. I think it's really nice and tangy. So it's really nice to dip the veg sticks in or use as a spread, and high protein and high fiber. So really quite satisfying.
Oh, it sounds delicious. And you don't have to be going through the menopause to be making these recipes either.
No, absolutely not. So that was one of our aims, was to make recipes that the whole family can enjoy, because the worst thing is trying to make stuff for individuals in a family, just make the same meal for everyone. And yeah, it's healthy for the whole family, basically.
Yeah, oh, it sounds really yummy. You earlier touched on hot flushes, and there are lots of symptoms to menopause from dry skin, mood swings, but hot flushes, 85% of women experience these. Can you tell us about other foods that are good or can support people going through hot flushes? And are there foods that people should be avoiding as well?
So yeah, a lot of women, 85% of women experience hot flushes to some degree. And it's basically because the estrogen affects the hypothalamus in the brain. So it's a little part in the middle of your brain that acts as the body's thermostat. So with the drop in estrogen, your body's thermostat gets a bit glitchy, in other words. And yeah, there's quite a few foods. Again, everyone's different. So sometimes it's useful to keep a bit of a hot flush food diary for a couple of days to try and figure out if there's any trigger foods for you as an individual. But common trigger foods that might bring on a hot flush are things like caffeine, because it is a stimulant, and also spicy foods and alcohol, because they tend to dilate blood vessels. And interestingly, cheese as well. So some people get kind of a hot flush, or cheese sweats, they're sometimes called, after eating a lot of cheese. And that's
I've
because
had them.
I've had them. You eat a lot of cheese in one go sometimes. And it's because cheese contains some adrenaline like compounds in them. So sometimes men and women can experience these cheese sweats, but in menopause, sometimes that reaction is kind of amplified during menopause. So there are some of the common kind of food triggers, but there are foods as well that can help potentially alleviate hot flushes. So soya foods, which we've talked about a little bit already, that it's the phytoestrogen present in soya foods that can kind of mimic the human estrogen. So they don't affect the level of estrogen in the body, but they can have a weak estrogen-like effect. So they can potentially help alleviate hot flushes if you include soya foods once or twice a day. And if you haven't included soya foods before, I would say add them gradually, because soya is a bean, and some women do have kind of bloating if they have too many beans and pulses in one go. So introduce them gradually, but 2 servings of soya a day may help with hot flushes. So having soya yogurt or milk alternative with your breakfast, or having a edamame bean hummus for lunch or something, or a tofu dinner might help. The only other thing to note is it might take a while to notice any difference. So don't give up too soon, because it might take several weeks to notice any difference in hot flushes after you start including soya foods. So, and the other thing to bear in mind, which I think is sometimes forgotten about, is keeping well hydrated, which sounds so simple, but it's often something that's not done that well. So making sure that you are well hydrated, because that helps the body regulate temperature. So I often say to women to try to front load your water consumption. So you drink most of your daily water intake earlier on in the day, so that you're not, which can help with energy levels throughout the day and brain function as well, so that you're not kind of not drinking water, and then all of a sudden in the evening you're getting really thirsty and drink lots, and then have to get up during the night to go to the toilet because you've just drank a whole lot in the evening. So having a good hydration strategy and keeping well hydrated throughout the day can be possible. Yeah, hopefully that's useful, but it's trial and error. And I'd say keeping a hot flush diary for a while to investigate what works for you.
How long do hot flushes usually last?
Oh, it varies so much. I've heard, some women have just a handful, and some women have, 30 plus a day type thing. Generally, they come on, well, at any time of day or night. You can get night sweats as well. And usually they last just a couple of minutes, but depending on the severity of them, they can just be a kind of warm feeling, or they can be really severe and very uncomfortable, and obviously can have a huge impact on daily life. And especially if you're at work, if you're doing a presentation or if you're in a meeting, it can be a really debilitating thing to go through. So yeah, they're all different intensities and frequencies. And yeah, they can last a short time or over a couple of months, or yeah, you can have them over several years or 10 years or longer. And sometimes you have them and then they disappear for a few years, and then you can experience them again. So yeah, it really varies. I've heard so many different experiences.
Moving on from hot flushes, around 20 to 40% of women experience depressive symptoms during menopause and menopause. Do you have any suggestions to supporting women's mental health during these stages?
Yeah, it's quite a common impact of menopause, actually, and definitely diet can play a role in helping with mental health. So there's really good evidence from a SMILES trial that was done quite a few years ago now, but the first randomized controlled trial looking at the Mediterranean diet, or a high fiber version of the Mediterranean diet, which showed that if you follow that type of diet, then it can have a really positive impact on mood and reduce the risk of depression. So the Mediterranean style of diet, having a diet that's got lots of plant foods in it and quite high in fiber to nourish all your gut microbes, which kind of makes sense because your gut microbes are linked with producing a lot of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, and these are involved in our mental health and our mood. So if you eat well to nourish your gut microbes, then yeah, there's good evidence to show that it's beneficial for mood and mental health. So including a rainbow of fruits and veg, but all different plant foods, actually, including at least 30 different plant foods in a week is a good target to aim for, to get that diversity of plant foods. So that includes all different types of nuts and seeds and grains and beans and pulses and lentils, and even herbs and spices would count towards that variety. So yeah, which helps give a variety of gut microbes in your gut, which then functions a lot better. So yeah, diet can play part of the support for your mental health, but I think also activity and helping reduce stress levels. So doing things that you enjoy, and if it is something that is impacting you or you feel like you're struggling with, then definitely, seek help and get the support and advice that you need. But certainly looking at your diet is one aspect of the story, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for anyone listening who is experiencing menopausal symptoms, the Mediterranean diet is your number one go-to. Yeah. Cutting out carbs, am I right in saying, or reducing carbs as well?
Yeah, well, carbs is often quite questioned. So carbs can be really useful. It's the right type of carbs that are, to focus in on. So quality carbs, so like the high fiber, whole meal, whole grain carbohydrates, the more starchy, complex carbohydrates that give you a slower, sustained kind of release of energy, rather than not having too many of the simple carbohydrates, the sugars, the added sugars, because that will tend to spike your blood sugar levels. So you'll have, you'll feel quite energized for a short time, but what goes up quick comes down quick as well. So then your blood sugar will plummet. So you'll start craving another quick fix. So you'll maybe start craving another sweet or biscuit. So it's all about finding that balance and focusing more on the quality carbohydrates, the oats, or having an oaty biscuit or a whole meal something. And with that balance as well, so protein foods can help dampen down any spike in blood sugar. So having a oat cakes and cheese is kind of one of my go-to snacks, which is a good combination of good quality carbohydrate with a bit of protein from the cheese, or yogurt and berries, which are nuts. So you get the carbohydrate and the protein combination. So yeah, so carbs are good for mental health, the good quality ones, because provide a lot of B vitamins as well, which is really useful for brain function and mood. So yeah, don't cut out the carbs completely. It's all about balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the word, isn't it? Balance, just making sure we keep that. It's great that we have recipes, but the day-to-day, if you want to have chocolate at the end of the day, what is your realistic approach to someone who has those sugar cravings and those cravings in the evening or throughout the day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they can come on at any time, and we all experience them, to be honest. So I'd say mindful eating can be a really useful technique or a practice to include. So we all experience different types of hunger, and we all experience time to time when we just have a craving for something, or when we've maybe had a rubbish day and just want some comfort food. So there's different types of hunger. I often refer to them as head hunger if it's something out of, you have a cup of tea and a biscuit automatically along with it because it's habits, or you see an advert on TV and you suddenly want what you've just seen, or your friend sitting next to you is having a chocolate cake and you want it because you've just seen it. So that's more of a head hunger. It's more often it comes on quite quickly, quite suddenly, these feelings, as opposed to a heart hunger, which is more comfort eating, where you just want that, comfort food because you want to feel good. And then there's the physical hunger, which is your body saying, I need food, I need nourishment and energy. And that's the one to respond to with food or a snack or something to nourish your body. So it's being aware of what type of hunger it is, and coming up with solutions for the different types of hunger. So if it's a head hunger or a heart hunger, what can you do that's non-food related to help you deal with that? And if it is a stomach hunger, then often it's thinking about your hunger and fullness on a scale of 1 to 10 and trying to keep it in the middle of that hunger scale. So if you do start to feel hungry, physically hungry, then definitely have a snack or something to eat. So it prevents your blood sugar getting too low and prevents you overeating once you do finally sit down to eat. So yeah, mindful eating techniques can be really useful to help find the right balance and the right portion size for you. And certainly, yeah, with cravings, yeah, we all get chocolate cravings now and again, but sometimes, yeah, going for maybe a dark chocolate is actually a really quite a healthy food to include. Dark chocolate has lots of antioxidants and nutrients like iron and a little bit of fiber, actually. So yeah, again, it's just about balance and being mindful of why you're eating and are you enjoying it. Yeah, so mindful eating can be a useful strategy.
Do you ever recommend an alternative to your heart and your head hunger?
Yeah, so head hunger, as I say, it generally comes on quite suddenly, and sometimes it's your brain is just wanting stimulation, your brain's bored. So often it's just changing your environment for a few minutes. So going out of the room or just going for a walk up and down the stairs, just to change your environment or kind of, yeah, stimulate your brain, or have an exercise snack. I often talk to clients about, just exercising for literally 1 or 2 minutes to break up long periods of sitting down. So that can just get your blood flow going and circulation going, and yeah, keep your brain a bit more active. So yeah, so that's one solution for a head hunger. And a heart hunger, it's about your body seeking comfort. So what non-food solutions are there that you find nice or comforting? So whether it's phoning a friend or listening to some nice music or playing some music or dancing, or, have a kind of making a mini list for yourself of things that you can do that will provide you that comfort that's non-food related. So you can have a glance at it and think, right, okay, I could go and do this instead. So yeah, sometimes work, not always, but yeah, it's worth thinking through what can you do as an alternative.
I suppose, like you said, it's about having that awareness. Is it head or heart hunger, or is it hunger? And then you can try and address it that way. Does hunger vary for people going through premenopause and menopause? Would you say you're more hungry, or is it the same?
That's a good question, actually. I think, yeah, so it maybe depends on the individual. And I think that there is evidence to show that the drop in estrogen or the changes in hormones during menopause can impact the body in many different ways. And often our appetite hormones are changed or can change. Our taste buds can actually change during perimenopause. Yeah. So some women find that they used to like certain foods and now they don't, or, foods taste different. So there's maybe, different things going on. So yeah, possibly. It's not an area I know too much about off the top of my head, to be honest, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that is the case.
I suppose eating habits do change. Like you said, you might want to comfort yourself more, so you can try and manage that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't realise your taste buds change. That's a really interesting fact. Thank you. We touched on very lightly on long-term health concerns that increase after the menopause, for example, bone health and heart health. Can you just talk in more depth about women's health post-menopause?
Yeah, so risk of some conditions goes up after menopause for women due to the drop in estrogen. So bone health, yeah, I think it's something a lot of women are aware of, and bone health or bone strength can decrease during menopause. So one of the statistics I find quite surprising is that 50% of women over the age of 50 will break a bone due to poor bone health. And the same figure in men is 20%. So women are much more at risk of their bones becoming less dense, less strong. And that's because, as I say, the drop in estrogen slows the loss of bone and is involved in bone turnover. So there's quite a sharp or a speedier decline in bone strength as women go through the menopause. And then it kind of levels off again or slows down at a similar rate to what men experience post-menopause. But that initial quite steep decline as women go through the menopause means that risk of osteoporosis is higher in women. So it's something to consider and be aware of for women. And definitely diet can play a huge role in preventing or supporting your bone health in the longer term. So nutrients like calcium and vitamin D, really important to make sure you get enough calcium in the diet. So dairy foods or tofu, calcium set tofu is a useful source. And vitamin D, which a lot of people generally have low levels of. So supplementing with vitamin D is really important because vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium and helps calcium get into the bone structure to mineralize the bones and keep them strong. So making sure you supplement with vitamin D, especially during winter months when there's no sunshine around, or even if there is sunshine around, it's not the right wavelength for us to make vitamin D. And also protein, which I think often you think of protein for muscles, but protein is really useful for bone health as well, because it's the proteins that form the mesh or the scaffolding inside the bones, which then the minerals come and fill in. So protein is really important for bone health, for strengthening bones. And we generally get enough protein in the diet, but what we're not so good at is spacing out our protein across the day. So making sure you have some protein at every meal can be really useful for making sure you get enough protein and also the body uses it more effectively. So yeah, so there's a couple of dietary factors to consider, and also for bone health, like the weight bearing exercises. So bones respond to the weight that they carry. So we know that if you've got a lighter build or lighter frame or lighter weight, then you tend to be more at risk of osteoporosis. So making sure you include some weight-bearing exercises like walking or carrying shopping bags or going up and down stairs, that type of thing can be really useful. Or strength exercises are really useful as you get older. But there's on the osteoporosis, the Royal Osteoporosis Society website, there's a osteoporosis risk calculator, which you can add in, answer a few questions, and it comes up with your kind of risk score for osteoporosis, which can be quite useful just to know where you are on that risk scale. And definitely, there are things that can be done diet-wise and preventative things that can be done to help support your bones. So so there's bone health, and the other health risk to think about is heart health, which I think is maybe not so much talked about. I think heart health is often thought of as a man's disease and something that men have. But actually, the World Menopause Day this year, the theme is cardiovascular health, which I'm really pleased to see, because the Lancet published a paper a few years ago saying that heart disease in women was so understudied, so undertreated, and under-recognized, and it's a huge area that needs more focus on. So, and certainly in menopause, your after menopause risk of heart disease goes up. And one of the reasons is because of cholesterol levels, which is cholesterol levels generally, they're one of the main risk factors for heart disease. And up until about the age of 45, more men than women have raised cholesterol. But then there's quite a sharp increase in cholesterol around menopause, or just the 1 or 2 years after you hit that menopause stage. And actually, about 2 in 3 women aged 55 to 65 have high cholesterol levels. So 66% of women kind of just past that menopause age have high cholesterol. And there's no kind of notable symptoms of high cholesterol. So unless you've had a test, you probably don't know if you've got high cholesterol. So it's a simple blood test, which you can get from your GP, or you should be able to get from your GP, or if not, there's kind of tests that are available, like little blood tests that you can prick your finger and it's a few drops of blood to know what your cholesterol levels are. And certainly if it is high, then there's lots of small dietary changes that can be really effective in bringing it down. Definitely something I think that should be thought of or considered if you are perimenopausal. Think about your cholesterol and blood pressure as well as something to know your numbers and see what it is.
Get checked out. Do you have any tips for reducing cholesterol?
Yeah, well, the main thing is to think about the saturated fat content of your diet. So are you including a lot of like the fats that are hard at room temperature? So the butter, the lard, ghee, those types of fats, and all the products that they're used in, so cakes and biscuits and pastries. So trying to reduce those types of foods as much as possible, and have plenty plant foods in the diet, so more fiber, more whole grains, plant proteins like soya. Actually, the soya protein has a modest effect in reducing cholesterol. So including edamame or soya can be really useful, not just for hot flushes, but also for heart health. And as I say, lots of fiber, the variety of plant foods, healthy fats from oily fish, including oily fish once or twice a week, and healthy fats from nuts and seeds. So having a portion of nuts a day is, I think, a really useful dietary habit to have for heart health. So a portion being like a closed handful of nuts, whether you sprinkle that on your overnight oats or on yogurt or on a salad. And oats themselves actually are useful for reducing cholesterol. Oats and barley in particular have a particular type of fiber called beta-glucan, which helps reduce cholesterol levels. So yeah, including kind of soya foods, oats and barley, nuts, they're all really useful foods to include to help keep cholesterol levels at a healthy level and beneficial for heart health. There's lots of information actually in the UCLP website, which is the Ultimate Cholesterol Lowering Plan website, which is based on good science, that type of diet has been shown to reduce or help reduce cholesterol levels. And they've got lots of recipes and advice and fact sheets on the Heart UK UCLP website.
Wow.
So it's a good resource to look at.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know we spoke about bone health and you said more dairy to increase calcium. Is there any other foods that you can get calcium from that's not dairy?
Yeah, there is. So one of the best sources actually is the fish with little, soft bones that you eat. So like sardines or anchovies, that type of fish, having the soft bones, they're really high in calcium. So if you have the sardines on toast or that type of thing a couple of times a week, then that's really useful. There's other sources as well, like sesame seeds, a couple of other kind of nuts and seeds, and green leafy vegetables like pak choi. Sometimes the absorption of the calcium from these types of foods are a bit harder for the body to absorb the calcium from these sources. But yeah, dairy is the one of the best sources of calcium, and the little fish with the soft bones, but also looking for the dairy alternatives, making sure they're fortified with calcium, which most of them are now, and the tofu as well. If it's the firm tofu, if it's set with calcium, you'll see on the back of the pack, the ingredients list should have calcium something or other listed in the ingredients if it's calcium set tofu. So that can be useful.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's really helpful because I'm sure there are vegans and vegetarians that can't have dairy. That's really useful to know. So to finish off, what would your 3 nutrition takeaways or tips be for eating well for anyone going through premenopause and menopause?
Yeah, so there's so many to choose from. So my first one, which probably comes as no surprise, is to include more plants, which I've talked about a lot, but include a wide variety of plants as possible for supporting your gut microbes. Because I think if you have a healthy gut, that's linked with so many different things, from like the neurotransmitters I talked about, which is involved in brain function and mood and sleep and stress levels. And so that can link in with a lot of potential menopausal symptoms. So if you look after your gut microbes by giving them lots of variety of plant foods and fibrous foods, then I think that would be a really good thing to do. So that would be the first one. The second one, I would say, consider heart health. It's an area that I think is, as I say, understudied and under-recognised, under-talked about. But consider the heart-healthy foods, like I just mentioned, the oats, the nuts, the soya foods, plenty plant foods again, and also get your cholesterol checked. If you've not had it checked for a while, like in the last couple of years, get a cholesterol check. Because if it is high, then there's lots you can do diet-wise, as I say, to help manage that. So yeah, know your numbers. And then the third one I would say is hydration. So make sure you hydrate well. I know it's something that sounds really simple, but a lot of women, I think, often one of the symptoms, which we've not really talked about today because there's so much to talk about, but bladder issues can be really common in perimenopausal women because the drop in estrogen can impact your pelvic floor muscles. So you might find that you get a kind of bladder issues like urgency of going to the toilet or more frequency going to the toilet, which can have a huge impact if you're at work or traveling for a long time. So maybe you actually consciously cut down on the water because you think, well, I'm not going to drink anything because I've got this long meeting coming up. I don't want to be nipping out to the toilet every 5 minutes. Or if you're car sharing or a train journey that you don't really want to use the toilets, you might say, right, I'm not drinking water because I don't want to have to go to the toilet all the time. So sometimes women consciously don't drink enough, and then that can actually start leading to more problems because it can have an impact on mood and mental health and anxiety and stop you from doing things as well, like exercising, which can then have an impact on, again, mood and heart health and all sorts. So it can kind of have a knock-on impact. So making sure you hydrate well and ask yourself, are you consciously not drinking enough, and why is that? And if it is bladder issues, then again, it's something that's not really talked about a lot at all, but definitely get support and get help with it, because there's lots that can be done medically. So, speak to your GP about it. Don't let it linger and, lead to worse issues in future. You don't have to suffer in silence type things. So making sure that you're well hydrated basically is, I would say, the third thing to think about.
That's a really good one. Is there anything, so someone who is approaching premenopause and menopause, is there anything someone could do beforehand? So pelvic floor exercises, does that help, or is that not really enough?
Yeah, I would think so. It's a little bit outside my scope of practice, but I would think, definitely doing some pelvic floor exercises and things like yoga can be really useful, because that can help strengthen your core muscles and help reduce stress levels and help with digestion. So including some gentle stretches or core exercises like yoga or Pilates daily, because often the core exercises work better little and often, rather than, it's great to have an hour's yoga once a week, but it's much more impactful if you do 15 minutes a day of yoga or stretching.
Okay, that's good to know.
So yeah, definitely things like that I think could help.
And the 30 plants, sorry to keep more questions on your final thoughts, but do you have any websites or recommendations on how you can keep on top of your 30 plants, or how you can know what they are? Because we talk about 30 plants a lot in business, and I just wanted your thoughts on where you can find out this information.
Normally with my clients, I've got a fact sheet or a handout that I give them with just a list of 30.
Okay.
But I do give some suggestions on some easy ways to get more variety. So, for example, if you're going for frozen veg, buy a pack of mixed frozen veg, or go for mixed frozen berries rather than just one type of berry, or again, a packet of mixed seeds sprinkled instead of just focusing on one, and trying to look at what's in season as well for, maybe some new ideas, or trying foods that you've maybe not had for a long time. So I think, gosh, I haven't looked at it for a while, but what's in season at the moment? I think chestnuts are coming into season at some point. Try something new, or next time you go to the supermarket, pick up something you've not had for a while, and just, try and include variety as and when. And herbs and spices, which I think are often stuck at the back of the cupboard and not used that often, but do use them as well, because they all add variety and can improve the taste of the food as well, and can help you reduce salt. So you might not need so much salt if you add lots of different herbs and spices. And there's some weird and wacky spices and combinations. What was it? I had mango and, so what do you call it? The herb that often people don't like.
Coriander.
Yeah, that goes really well together. Mango, coriander,
really?
and lime juice.
What did you put it on? Or just on its own?
It was just like a mango salad that I had, along with some fish, like baked cod that I had, which went quite well. So yeah, trying new recipes is always quite good for getting more variety and extra plant foods and different grains and different pulses as well, because we often, I think, don't eat enough pulses and lentils, and there's different colours of lentils and grains to use. So yeah, there's lots of variety out there to enjoy, and do mindful eating as you're eating it to see, do you like the taste and the texture and the flavour, and enjoy it more, because food is much more than just about the nutrients.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Laura. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share? Anything you've not said?
Oh gosh, there's lots I've not said. But it's great just to, I think, encourage women to talk more about menopause, and for men to get a better understanding as well of what women are going through, and how to support women going through the menopause. But yeah, just talking more about menopause and experiences, so it's understanding grows and women are well informed and feel more confident in doing the right things for their own body, because everyone's different. So it can be a tough time, but it's a natural process for women to go through. But I think talking about it more and being well informed can really help.
Thank you so much for joining, FYI. And I think so many of our listeners will take real value from what we've spoken about. especially those going through menopause and those who know someone that's going through menopause, I think will get real value from this conversation. To our listeners, if you would like more information and nutritional advice on the menopause, please look into Laura's book, Eating Well for Menopause, Advice and Recipes to Improve Your Health and Wellbeing. You can find this on Laura's website or on Amazon.